one of the great stories is that you were touring with the Sex Pistols.
Oh, yeah.
Correct?
I ended up on the bus across America with Sex Pistols.
Right, and she told me to ask you about the boots.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mention that last night, did I? I met Malcolm. I was working a lot with the New York Dolls, and towards the end of their career, as the band was almost about to break up, Malcolm McLaren showed up with a whole bunch of clothes he had made for them, and he kind of helped them get back together a little bit, long enough to wear his clothes, and he had wanted to manage them, but they were really falling apart. So he went back to England with the idea of putting together a band similar to that, and in fact he was going to bring Sylvain from the Dolls over to England to be the lead singer of his new band. I was a little instrumental in messing that up because I helped David and Syl get a job. They had no money whatsoever, and I knew this promoter in Japan. I helped him get a job in Japan, and Malcolm got tired of waiting for Syl to come to England, so he got this other guy, this Johnny Rotten, to be the head of the band.
Right.
So the first time I ever went to England, about a year later, in '76, I only knew two people. It was the editor of the Melody Maker magazine, who was a kind of conservative guy, and I knew Malcolm. And by that time, the scene in England had just been starting to be developed. Under the punk scene was pretty much confined to one little nightclub where they all would hang out, and Malcolm took me to this club Louise, and I met Sex Pistols and The Clash and Susie and the Banshees and Billy Idol, and I remember Marco Perrone standing there and looking at these other people and saying, "Oh, I wish I had a band." And a year later I came back, he was in Gen X with Billy, and I think Elvis Costello was there. It was just this nucleus of what became the punk scene. It was all in this little club. So I did some photo sessions then. I came back a year later when Sid was in the band and spent a little time with them. I went to Radio Luxembourg, an interview with them, spent a day with them, and then came back to New York. And then they came to New York in January of '78, and they were supposed to play at Saturday Night Live. And I figured I would take some pictures of them in New York and wave goodbye, and they'd have, a trip across America. But I couldn't afford to go and didn't really need to go. I didn't really think the band was going anywhere. They weren't very good. They weren't getting, in America, in England, they were like considered outrageous, and it wasn't about the music. It was about the outrage. And I didn't really think that would last all that long. And so I wasn't planning on, going on a tour with them. But then I think between Steve and Sid, they had some visa problems, and it delayed their trip to America. So instead of playing in New York, they went straight to Atlanta. And I figured I had to go down for a day just to keep the continuity, get some pictures of the band in America. So I went just wearing the clothes I had in my camera bag because I was coming back in the morning. And then after the show, I was saying goodbye. They were getting on the bus, and I was saying, "Well, so long, Malcolm. I'm sure you're going to have a great trip, have a lot of fun in America. Too bad I can't come along, but, I'll see you later." And he said, "Yeah, you can't come, Bob, because there's only 12 allowed on the bus, and there's the band and Sophie and me and the guards." And, "Well, that's only 11, Bob. Why don't you get on?" And I'm like, "What?" And I remember the guy next to me said, "I'll come, Malcolm." And he said, "Sorry, Bob asked first." And I was like, "When was that?" And so I got on the bus. And I was there for 10 days, all the way to San Francisco, through Texas and Oklahoma, and all the stops they made. And somewhere along the way, I had these boots that were kind of engineer boots with a steel toe, and Johnny Thunders was wearing the same boots, and in fact, he was wearing them because when he was in England and I was coming over, he'd asked me to bring him a pair. So I had brought him a pair. And Sid Vicious really liked those boots. They were like American, solid made, and I don't remember the name. They started with an H, the brand, but they were good, solid American-made engineer boots, with the steel toe.
They weren't the Herman Survivors, were they?
I'm not sure the name. I should
Those
look it up.
Boots from around that time. Yeah.
But they were pretty like standard American engineer boot. And but anyway, Sid really liked them because Johnny had them, and I was wearing them. So one night on the bus, or one afternoon on the bus, I kind of took my boots off to lay out on the couch on the front. Instead of going back into a bed, I was like laying on the couch and fell asleep for a while. And when I woke up, Sid was wearing my boots. And his boots were sitting there, and they were this English paratrooper boots with a big wide bottom. Now, a funny part about the boots is that at one point when I was in England, I tried to stand on the front of one of the boots on the steel tip to get just an inch and a half higher, to get a little bit higher over a crowd, to get a picture of a band. And it had bent the metal a little bit. And I tried to have a shoemaker bang it back, but it was a heavy steel, and there was no way to get into the boot to bend it back. And every time I had to walk a certain way, because if you didn't walk just right, the metal would kind of cut into your toe a little, and it was awkward. And I really didn't like them all that much. And so Sid started wearing them, and he gave me his paratrooper boots, and I put them on, and they were like super comfortable. And I remember swinging off the bus and jumping down onto the ground. And because they're paratrooper boots, they were made with a wide sole, and that was kind of cushioned, and it just was soft and comfortable and protective. And so I really liked the boots. And so Sid was wearing mine, and what was really nice and then I heard the story later that while I was asleep and another guy and Johnny were sitting across from me on the front of the bus, Sid was looking at my boots and tried them on, and then he took his knife out and held it to my throat while I was sleeping, and turned to them and said, if I kill him, I can keep his boots. And now the part of the story I don't like is that they didn't say anything. They watched just to see what would happen. Now I'm here today, so luckily he didn't cut my throat. But when I woke up, he was wearing my boots, and as I say, I was much more comfortable in his boots. And over the next couple of days, each one of the other three Sex Pistols, Paul and Steve and Johnny even, came up to me and said that they liked having me on the bus, and they liked having me with them to take pictures, and that there was no way that Sid had control over whether or not I was on the bus. And if I wanted my boots back, I should just tell him, give me my boots back. But that wouldn't keep me. If I wanted my boots back, just take them back, and that wouldn't, cause any rift that would get me thrown off the bus or anything. Which was really nice to hear them say to me that they wanted me there. But in fact, I really didn't want my boots back, and I was happy to be wearing Sid's boots. And then on the last day of the tour in San Francisco, they wanted to go to a store that had American motorcycle leather jackets, and so they took them there. And in the store, I saw the exact same kind of boots. And I showed him to Sid. I said, look, Sid, here's those kind of boots. Why don't you get a pair that's in your size, and you break them in for your feet, and they're your boots, And he said, no, I'm going to keep your boots because they're already broken in. And I thought, broken in? They're actually broken, But he said, I'm going to keep your boots, but I'm going to buy you a new pair. So he bought me a brand new pair of them, and I kept his paratrooper boots.
Wow.
And so if you ever see Sid Vicious's boots from his American tour on eBay, you'll know that I'm broke because I still got them stashed away. Very comfortable boots.
Yeah, it sounds like you got the better end of that deal. For
I think so.
Because, like you said, like you didn't have to worry about the toe digging it.
And the funny thing about it is that one of the roadies, I think that day or the next day, took Sid to his house, and he had a pair of boots similar but almost knee high that that he gave to Sid, and that Sid, I think, wore for the rest of the year. Because I actually saw my boots online in England in a castle of criminality. There's a museum in England. I think you can still find it online. It was. I don't know if it's called Castle of Criminality or Museum of Criminality, but they consider Sid to be a murderer, even though he was never convicted of killing Nancy. They never did find out who did it. But anyway, they have this exhibit of Sid Vicious's boots and his necklace, and the boots are my boots.
That's crazy.
So that was a really weird, to find my boots online there. Like, yeah, there they are.
Wow.